Going live. Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Gibson. I'm the creator of Norm Therapy. I'm actually in obligation to tell you, I want to talk about our disclaimer up front. Well, we're not normal therapists. We're not psychotherapists or doctors, but we use the commonsensical approach to abuse. It has a very interesting flair to it that we like to call norm therapy. We take this therapy very seriously. As a matter of fact, our norm therapists go through about a 6-month training program and then an additional probationary period. Sometimes it can go from 6 months to a year, depending upon the individuals, because we do have medical doctors, we have psychotherapists, we have counselors, drug counselors, and other professionals from every walk of life who are now trained as norm therapists and are operating as such and within their own capacities. They love what we do. They think we're the missing link, and they thrive. They really thrive, as well as the rest of our staff and norm therapists from around the world. We have norm therapists everywhere on every continent. We've been training them for the past 5.5 years in some capacity or the other. And now we're looking for an opportunity to take all of this to a whole nother level. So we're going to do a live session today, and we're going to continue this session for the next probably 19 weeks. And we're going to have 3 different people within those 19 weeks. And we'll probably be doing 3 sessions per week per person, and you'll be tuned into all of that. So try to follow along, take notes, and see where we can help people with their survivability as well as their abuse. Thank you. And I'll ask Bobby to come in now. All of you know Bobby. Hi, Bobby. How are you today?
Well,
I'm glad to hear. I'm going to turn my volume up just a little bit more, and we're going to speak up just a little louder for the audience. Is that okay?
that's fine.
All right. Still coming in kind of low.
Still coming in kind of low?
Yeah. Let me see here. But it's okay. It's okay. I'm at 100%. I think we got you.
Okay. I'm turned up to 100 too.
How was there's something, maybe you have your earphones on or something, or jack in or something, because it's coming in kind of muffled. But that's okay. Listen, I think I'll be able to hear you. I'm wondering if Kelly and Kim can hear you well. Okay, it's very low. If you can, it was just sounding perfect a few moments ago. But anyway, that's okay.
Am I up on it too close?
No, that's fine. Now you guys just speak up, perhaps. Okay, listen. On our last session, you had something going on, and that was pretty interesting. It had nothing really to do with our session. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay. How are your kids doing today?
They're doing well. They've all slept in. Me and my son watched a movie last night, and me and him went to bed, and then my
Can you
husband.
come into the camera just a little closer, because I can hardly hear you.
Okay. Is it the camera now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, but it's like your volume's on low. Your mic volume is down or something.
I'm turned up to 100.
Well, it's okay. Well, maybe something blocking the mic. Sorry about this, everyone.
That's okay.
I want to make sure that you be able to hear everything.
Is that better?
Much better. Much better there.
Okay. I just put something up under the laptop, so
That works. Yeah, that's working a little bit better. Okay, now tell me something. And I want to just jump right in because we kind of missed a session. So, how much do you like you?
I would say about percentage wise, 70%.
So you like yourself 70% of the time. Why 70%?
The other 30%, I feel like that I could be doing a lot better. I feel like I could be more productive and just setting some boundaries and in the way that I maybe think about things.
Well, let's get down into the weeds on that. You know, abuse victims, when they normally think of themselves, as a matter of fact, just about everyone in society does pretty much the same thing. You want to know what that is, Bobby? Now you're completely mute. I can't hear you at all.
What's that?
Everybody gets this one thing wrong in life. Is when they evaluate themselves, they get themselves wrong. There's a thesis by the name of Dunning-Kruger. And if you look it up, it basically tells you that if you judge yourself and you're constantly in some turmoil of bias or split decision about you, be it negative or positive, normally you will get it wrong every time. Why? Because you have bias. If you think you're bad, then you really believe you're really bad. If you think you're good, you really believe you're really great, because that's what we do. We have biases. So we're going to try and find out if that's a real 70% or where you are exactly in our conversation. Normally, people who think they're very smart are not so smart. And people who think they're very dumb are normally pretty smart. It's because how we evaluate ourselves and how we self-denigrate and how we talk, we poor talk or negatively talk to ourselves, it makes for a terrible conversation. How often do you sit around and you say, oh, Bobby, why did you do this? Oh my God, why did you do that? How often?
Sometimes.
Is that 30% of the time, 40% of the time? What are we talking about here?
Maybe 40% of the time.
Okay, so a lot. You sit around sometimes and you think, you know, perhaps maybe you're doing it wrong. Who do you trust? Who do you trust the most about telling you exactly about you? Who can get in your face and tell you exactly about you without any lies or any embellishment or anything else? Who do you trust to do just that?
I don't think that anyone knows me that well.
Huh. Sometimes knowing you well and thinking people know you well are two different things. And I'll tell you something. There is someone who knows you very well. You know, the most honest people on the planet, you have plenty of them around, your kids. Kids will be very honest if you give them permission.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. They're like the
Especially
walking
young.
barometers of life. What I would do if I were you from time to time when you think you're such a terrible human being, just give a child permission. Just say, hey, you can tell me anything you like. Is your grandma or your mom a terrible person today? Am I being mean? Or do I sound dumb with what I'm doing? And they will give you also glowing praise, but they'll tell you the truth if you allow them. If you tell them it's okay to tell me the exact truth, they will tell you the truth. And you should probably take them serious, because innocent people normally can't really muster the intellect or the acumen or even the cunningness to lie. They just won't. They'll just tell the truth. And you should start listening to those smaller spirits in your home and work your way up. Thin-skinned people are normally in turmoil all the time because they hear things and people tell them things or treat them a certain way or talk down to them or denigrate them or psychologically abuse them in ways that they know they're getting to them. They're trying to trigger them into their anxiety or under their control or manipulation. That's why part of norm therapy is teaching people how to have a thicker skin. Sometimes your most intimate evaluations or another person's opinion of you could be extremely valuable if you're open to listen. But if you're reticent, if you're not willing to listen, then you'll never know what that person really had to say, no matter how many times they say it, because it won't resonate. That's called cognitive bias. And not really, it's cognitive dissonance in this particular case, but a cognitive dissonance. Because what actually happens is you have already an understanding thought of who you are and what you're about and what you believe in and what you know and what you think you know, what you don't know. You've had to live it. Matter of fact, you had to survive by it your whole life. You had to, and you had to encroach on other areas of your psyche, of your body, of your environment. You had to go in all different places to position yourself with you in order to understand the things you do and how you operate and how you act and how you react and how you respond. So you've been doing it a long time. You've gotten in trouble, as you mentioned in your first session with us, so many times, and we're only on the third one that we've even talked about. But I want to go back to someone before we go there. And I want to just give you this quick narrative that don't be so quick to judge yourself and try to expand on your answers just a little bit more so we can talk about it. I don't mind digging it out, but let's just have a good time with this today. I think that you're one of the strongest people I've interviewed in a while. I think, just based on my experience dealing with abuse victims, is that you're just tired. You're just exhausted with having to defend everything and deal with everything and have it hit your shoulders and hurt you and take and bear the brunt for everyone else. Exhaustion will whip you silly. It just will. And once you're exhausted, you will deplete yourself of the resources you need, Bobby, in order to make the right decisions or have the right attitude or appreciate something coming from somewhere where otherwise you wouldn't have. In order to engage with these parts of your life that are very normal for most people, that's why we call it norm therapy. We're not trying to find Michael Gibson's normal or Barbara's normal. We're trying to find your normal. But what would be normal in your circumstances around you and keeping you calm and keeping you understood that you're not dealing with abuse in that particular moment, but you're actually dealing with yourself. The real you, the one that exudes you or come out when there's no abuse around, or you don't have that memory of the abuses prevalent in your mind at that moment. That's the real you, and we want to capitalize on finding that person. After we find that clarity and assess it, and then we find that truth of who that person truly is, I think that's going to benefit you in ways insurmountable to what most can possibly imagine. What I try to explain to people, and I'm being long-winded right now, but I'm going to let you speak in a moment. What I try to explain to people is norm therapy is different in a couple of ways. One, we don't deal with mental health. That's not what we do. We deal with abuse care. You get a woman. It's 3:00 in the afternoon. Her husband gets home. He slaps her right in the face. And she looks right up at him and said, "What did you do that for? You bastard, blah, 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 blah. I'm going home. I'm leaving." And then she stays. The next day, the next couple of days, she slaps again. And then next day, she gets slaps again. And then on and on and on for months, she goes and endures this beating from her husband. Until one day, he walks in and he forgets. He absolutely forgets to slap her. Just walks right past her. What do you suppose she does?
Wonders why he didn't slap her.
Exactly. The curiosity. Why didn't my husband slap me? Because I expect that to happen now. So she kind of like what happened today? Her face is extended to him. Because it's impossible to lie to yourself. You can't do it. Your amygdala, your prefrontal cortex, your frontal lobes, and all the other parts of your brain working in concert will not let you lie to yourself. Impossible. My hair is orange and my eyes are purple. I know that's untrue, But I bet you if I walked in every single day and I slapped your face and said, look at my purple hair, look at my orange eyes, purple hair, orange eyes, purple hair, orange eyes for months and months. And I guarantee you one day we're getting out of the shower and I'm standing in front of the mirror, she'll look up at me and say, you know, you need to cut your purple hair. Because I've just conditioned her to what? To understand that I have that. And she doesn't really believe it. This is her survival instincts kicking in to not disagree with me, one, but also she's been conditioned that that's the right answer. So she's going to start seeing it or making herself see it, even though it isn't there and she doesn't even see it there. And that's the difference. That's what happens with abuse. So when you take a person outside of abuse, an abusive circumstance, like, okay, let's say all of a sudden, the authorities get wind of her husband and he goes to jail. He's gone. She now has the home, the kids, and everything to herself. No abuse whatsoever. How do you think she feels?
Probably free.
Yeah, she does. She feels abuse free, but she also feels something that we're trying to get with you, and that's normal. She feels normal for a change, something she probably hadn't felt in a long time. Nobody's slapping her, no one's bullying her. There's no threat of any kind of reprisal. There's no kind of external or internal threat that she's worried about at that particular moment. Although it still looms somewhere in the distance because he may come home, but she would normally revert back to a human, a person with a normal, or at least a direction towards their normal, and not necessarily to mental health care. Not because she hasn't been traumatized enough or probably has PTSD, but because she first has to see herself and where she stands and where her meters are before she starts seeking more help and in which direction she goes. And that's only determined by her behavior. So we'll talk more about that, but I wanted to let you know that you were there. I sense that you've been there for quite some time. You've been conditioned to respond the way you do. You've been conditioned to be one of the people who, the last one in the room and always the one that's caught, always the one that takes the rap or takes on the blame. Just from our previous conversation, when your father decided that he would take you under his wing in your early teens and he would teach you all of these bad things, where else did you have to go in order to not be in that atmosphere? Where did you have to go?
I had to go. I mean, I was at my grandma's next door.
Okay.
He lived next door, like literally in the next lot from my grandmother's and grandfather's.
And your grandparents, they were your safety net, so to speak.
Yeah, but he would come there too, and he would go like he would yell at my grandma and grandpa, or it was always it was so unpredictable that pretty much the whole house walked on eggshells until my grandfather, he would be the one to put his foot down and say, like, get out of here or go home, but at the same time they enabled my dad to live right next door and do whatever he wanted to do.
Tell me something. In those exchanges, if you had to give me or paint me a picture of those accounts, what would your father be saying to your grandparents exactly? What would he be? Would he be respectful screaming, disrespectful screaming? Well, screaming in itself is disrespectful. So how did that go?
He, looking back and knowing what I know now, he had a sense of entitlement. He felt like my grandparents owed him something. He was the baby. He was the youngest of four. My Like I said, my grandma came from the school systems. My grandfather worked in Cleveland, and they gave him everything that he wanted. I think it was because him and my mom had me as young and didn't want or didn't know how to parent me, so they gave me to my grandparents. But he would just like demand money or demand. My grandfather opened him up a car repair shop. He was a licensed mechanic so that he could, try to make a living that way. Um, he was just very demanding and very in his addiction. He would demand money or just argue. Why didn't this get done? Why didn't that get done? Where's this? Where's that? Like a kid at 40, or I mean, he died when he was 45, but
And
he
you
just
witness all of this. We'll get back to how did he die? And we'll get back to it, I'm sure, as we discussed before.
overdose.
Overdose, yes. Um, so he died at 45, but during his 40s, when he was, of course, trying to rear you, at the same time, bring you into his world of calamity and corruption and criminality.
Yeah, probably his late 30s
Okay.
or yeah, mid 30s.
So how did he make you do the things you did? So he was disrespectful to your grandparents. So you didn't really have a sanctuary there. Whenever he wanted to come and snatch you out of there, he could.
Right, right. But he would usually, all I ever wanted was my dad to say, "Hey, you know what? You did a good job." Or he was my softball coach at one time, and when he was my softball coach, like I said, I got most improved player, most valuable player, and he wasn't the one giving the rewards, so it was based off of performance. Um, and so my dad would. It wasn't all bad, you know. He would. He taught me how to shoot a gun. He taught me how to hunt. Taught me how to fish. Like he always wanted a boy, and my mom said that Bobby, as my name, was the closest thing he was going to get. So,
Yeah, I'm
I
sure a
mean,
lot of women in the world have gone through that one. A
yeah,
lot of people want a son, end up with daughters. My first two children were girls, and then my son came at the third. So trust me, I was looking for a son myself. I understand that dynamic, but he actually took you to the another extent. What he did was he took you hunting and fishing and all of those things that traditionally men do with their sons, but some women have been lucky enough to learn these skills too, and I think they're valuable skills. But also he brought you on like a partner in crime too.
yes,
He made you an accomplice. And, that's something that's not as widely uh, recognized that he should be doing, at least if you're a girl, back then when you were a little girl.
yeah. I mean,
Did he
he
coerce you?
didn't. Well, he didn't have to coerce me. I just wanted to be around my dad, and I really didn't know why I why my grandparents kind of forbid me to go there or stay long periods of time. They didn't want me over there. They knew what he was. They called it doping. He's over there doping, and the company he was keeping wasn't the best company. And I was curious. I was interested in what was so bad about my dad that I loved that I couldn't go over there. So it never really took coercion to get me there. Um, and then saying, "Oh, well, you can smoke some reefer, but don't get into the hard drugs." And uh, I can remember he had lost some marijuana, and I found it in a tin can, and I hid it, and he was looking all over for it, and that's when he had the conversation, like, I don't know if you got it or not, but I don't care if you smoke a little reefer. Well, yeah, I did, and I found it, and class was my whole bus stop got high because I didn't know any better. I was just doing what he showed me,
Of course.
and
You call that
it was
hustling? Were you hustling?
yeah, that was early. I was in ninth grade.
Wow. So at 14, 13 years old, you were about conniving, hiding, uh, cheating. Looking back on it today, how did that make you feel? Give me your estimate of self at 14. How did that make you feel?
Um, I can't say that it made me feel bad because I felt like
What what did it make you feel? I'd love to hear.
it made me feel liked. It made me feel powerful. It made me feel like I was accepted by my father.
Well, and that's what you always wanted, correct?
Yeah.
So now you were in this cycle of behavior that included everything, not everything, but most things that you wanted. You wanted the attention, you wanted the praise, you wanted to be understood by him, you wanted to be seen. And then more importantly, I think you wanted to be valued by him. And you had a certain level of all of that, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
So with that value, anything he asked you to do along the lines of appreciating what you do, you would do it.
Yeah.
What was the worst thing he's ever asked you to do?
Um, it would be go out with his friend. Just go out with this friend. He was lonely. At the time I didn't look at it like he was um putting me in a bad situation.
Can we
But
expand on that?
yeah, he would ask me to go out with his friends who were his age.
Mhm. To
Um,
what end?
say it again.
To what end? What was the purpose of you going with it?
Well, it would end up sexual.
Okay, so he would, may I use this term without insult?
Yes.
He would be pimping you, in other words.
Yes.
Would they pay him?
I'm sure I didn't never see it. I never seen it, but um, it became frequent. It became
Oh,
frequent after I had my first daughter.
he just
It
could
became
not, he
yeah, it
couldn't let
became
you go. Is that it?
yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't reject it. I just that was part of
The
what I
relation.
my relationship with my dad. Like every drug that I ever tried, I tried it with him. Even after he started with, oh, this is just, you can smoke some marijuana, but don't get into hard drugs. Every drug that I ever tried, I tried first with my father.
Okay. So he was not the
And there,
best influence in the world, but he was the
no,
only influence you had.
yeah.
Okay. In about 10 different areas, you were abused from just this last oration. You know that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Drug abuse, child abuse, sexual abuse, psychological abuse, narcissistic abuse. You were abused and quite a human trafficking in it to a certain extent. Who else had that kind of control over you, Bobby, during this time frame? Did any of his friends have the authority to tell you to do something you didn't want to do? Or something that you wanted to do, but only your father would normally ask you to do?
Um, I think my dad was just the biggest person that ever really could ask me to do something and I would.
Right.
Um, his friends was pretty much intimidated my dad. Like if he would yell or um, he was notorious for um, not being the nicest person. Uh, he was,
Let's
and
not sugarcoat it. How bad was he? He wasn't, so he wasn't the nicest person. So was he like
I
the
mean,
bad guy in the group?
if he fought with somebody, like I can remember one time he was working on this guy's car and he didn't pay him. And so he like chased him around with a hammer and went and got the motor and it ended up dumping out in the road and
He was a
uh
tough guy. He's a tough
yeah,
guy and he showed it through his brute force sometimes.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know a lot. I grew up in Chicago. Trust me, I understand the type. Uh, but I'll say this to you about your dad. You said something earlier that kind of piqued me. You said it wasn't all bad. Compared to what you just said, and we're going to delve into that as well over time. But compared to what you just said, tell me something good about your dad.
Um like I said, he taught me a lot of skills, like changing brakes, changing, car stuff,
Mechanic
taking care,
stuff.
you know,
Okay, let's leave
mechanic
mechanic and
stuff.
horses and hunting out of it. Tell me something good about your dad, not the stuff the hunting and all of those are nice skill sets to have. And every parent should do their best to teach their children something every day. No matter, even it's just how to blow up a balloon, something. But beside that, I'm talking about terms and matters of the heart. Matters of the
Uh,
heart. Did you feel loved by your father?
at the time, I did.
Okay, I'm going to ask you in today's present tense.
No, not today. I don't.
Okay.
I know that it was unhealthy. I know that he fucked me up a lot.
Sometimes we disguise our motives with someone and we confuse them into believing it's something else. And I think that what you've been through in life, it's almost impossible to BS you. I think you're the person that looked at everything like, what? That's one of the things I like about you, is you look at everything in a way like, tomorrow's still coming, I'll just deal with it today. But sometimes you have to give yourself a break from that. Sometimes you have to stop and deal with today. You really do. Your father displayed what he thought was love, I'm sure, which we now, just based on what you've told me, is probably a distorted version of love or not love at all. But that's really up to your determination of that. And we can talk more about that as time ensues. We can talk more about that, of course. But I'm more interested in knowing, has he ever pulled you aside and held you in his arm and said, daughter, it's going to be okay?
No,
Has he ever pulled you aside and sit you on his knee and said, I'm your protector and I will not let anything happen to you?
no,
Has he ever said, I hear you and I see you, and everything I see and hear matters to me? Has he ever done that? And because it's not always what's there that counts, Bobby. It's what's not there that counts just as much. And I'll guarantee you something. Matter of fact, I don't even give guarantees ever, but I'll give you one today. I guarantee you, when your grandchildren look at you, you make sure they know that you're there for them, that you see them, that you protect them, you understand them, and you love them. Am I correct?
yeah.
Why do you think that happened? Why do people to have survived and made it through some of the worst circumstances? We'll get into more as we go to more sessions. But how do you think that happened? How did you not become such a terrible grandmother and loser and hater? How did you not become her? What happened, Bobby, that you decided what?
I don't want them to they don't have a dad right now, and I don't want them to feel like they aren't protected.
But you want them, more importantly, to do better than you.
Yeah, to be better. Yeah.
Absolutely. Most people in life want you to do better, but no one wants you to do better than them. But when you have true love for somebody and empathy and caring and kindness and respect and understanding, and you have all of these elements that make love, that makes love what it truly is, love, you always want them to do better than you. So what do? You constantly grade yourself and degrade yourself and self-denigrate. You self-talk negatively. You put yourself down so you can always be beneath them insofar as value, not insofar as who you truly are, but just value, so you can always see them ahead because you feel that that's your job and you're doing a good job of that. That may not be the most productive thing to do, but that's a step in the right direction. Sometimes the people you most care about and you want to impress upon them the understanding that they need to do and be and say and exist better than you did in your past or in your present. Sometimes they need to see you strong. They need to see you better than them. Give them to which to aspire. When you self-talk and you self-denigrate, you put yourself down. When you do these things and they're in earshot or eye shot, I guess you want to call it, of that activity, what happens? They then go, I don't know if I'm above or below. What do I do? I'm confused. I don't know. So you are a champion. You've been through hell and back many times. And with that journey or those journeys, you've been able to learn where you've made your mistakes. You've not always figured out how to fix them all, but you've learned how to avoid them to some level from our initial conversations. And that's a good thing. And they see that. When they see you cry and hurt, they cry and hurt. When they see you laughing, they laugh. When they see you excelling and doing something great, they feel like they're a part of your greatness. You give them that gift. Remember, every relationship you ever have in life, Bobby, is nothing but an exchange of power. When your father and you were growing up together, because he was acting like an adolescent, if you ask me, at 30s and 40s, but when you were coming up together, he was treating you like you were one of the boys and you were his little precious girl. He treated you like you were a son who was forgive me, a degenerate son, but you were his precious daughter. You lived a model life up until you got pregnant and went another way. You were a sports person in high school. You were a good student. You were a goody two-shoes girl. You were an all-American kid until he got his hands on you. And then he gave the authority to other people to have their hands on you, physically, mentally, psychologically, in other ways, sexually. And that type of disrespect to you stay with you, even though you were conditioned to believe that you can handle it all. And hey, it was just a part of the relationship, as you said. Even though you were conditioned to that, it still wasn't correct. That's why the lady that gets slapped every day believes her husband has orange hair or purple hair or whatever I said in that example. Same with your dad. He conditioned you to believe that that was something that was okay and normal, and you recognize it as normal, even though it wasn't. And you'll be damned if you do the same thing to your grandkids or your kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do we get you to where you can not only just be damned that you won't let that happen, but that you start treating yourself the same way you want them to be treated? See, if you don't treat you, because the biggest abuse of all, I believe, on the planet, and a lot of people say, oh, it's child abuse, it's sexual abuse, it's psychological abuse. I think it's self-abuse. It's just all of the people I've met on the planet that I've worked with and I've helped in norm therapy over these years, I'll tell you, the more prevalent problem with abuse on the planet is self-abuse. Sometimes we hurt ourselves to such the extent that we think it's normal. And we stick with it. Because why? That's all we know. Like you said about you and your dad. That's all we know. So what happens? We further and further take ourselves down that spiral. So tell me this. When you first went into prison and you took a rap for your dad, if I remember correctly.
He was stolen property.
And he was supposed to go to jail, but you went for him.
Yeah.
How did that make you feel, just on this one specific thing? How did it make you feel the next time you were caught and it was with your dad and or the accomplices with parts of the people he put you with? I think it was his wife at the time.
Yeah. The first one, my co-defendant was one of his friends. My second charge was co-defendant was his friend's wife.
Got it. So how did you put those together. You saw your circumstance getting worse, and then worse, and then worse. Am I correct?
Yeah, but I didn't see him getting worse.
You saw it as what?
As being closer to my dad.
So you go away to prison for a year, 2 years. The third time, how long were you sentenced?
Third time was 4 years.
Well, you were in prison for how many? How much did you get off a good time or good behavior?
No, they let me out on a shock parole after 6 months. Went down to a halfway house and they put me in there with the co-defendant. And in my mind, I was just like, send me back to prison.
Okay. We're going to talk more
Because
about prison life. I'm going to dedicate an entire session on prison life. We're going to come with notes and paint pictures and talk really about that. But I'm more interested in the pattern of recidivism of right now, in and out, the revolving doors of prison. What today could make you go back to prison?
Somebody hurting one of my family members, probably.
That's pretty much everybody in the world, I think. Well, maybe not. Some people don't have, our society is built upon cowards. We're all over the world. Everyone's taught to be a coward pretty much from birth these last 5 or 6 decades of our existence around the world. People have become more passive, less protective of their own, and more selfish as a society at whole. It's just ridiculous sometimes to even sit back and observe. But you're a toughie. You're a person not afraid. You're not afraid to take the first lick or give it. So
I
tell me.
think, when you asked me that, and I was just thinking that, there are some times that not necessarily someone's hurting my family, but I may know what's going on and I don't say anything about it or don't do anything about it because it has been a part of my normal for a very long time. So that's called an accomplice. And
Yeah.
there's been times when I may or may not have known. And
You know what it's really called? Would you like to know what it's really called? And we all mask it a different way. And it goes back to the statement I was just making. It's called fear. See, fear of not doing it because I won't be loved. Fear of doing it and then I get caught. Fear of being involved in it and then someone sees me and then they hurt me. Or fear of whatever that outcome is. Fear. In every abuse, no matter what the abuse, psychological, physical, mental, sexual, is always an element of fear. That's the underlying theme in all of it. And people know for the most part, that's why most people who are being abused today are pretty much chronic in their efforts to coexist with that abuse. The reason why this happens is because most people are cowards. And you're no coward, but you weren't taught to be brave. You were taught to just be quiet and let it happen and go with it. That's a form of cowardness, of giving up. It's not that you're a coward, but in a traditional sense of, oh my God, boo, ah. No, not that. You're a coward because you could have spoken up. You could have done something about it, and you didn't. And then that didn't just happen once or twice. It happened 6, 7, 8 times. Exactly. So courage is not the absence of fear. It's the control of fear. That's all courage is. I spent many years in special forces, and I can tell you volumes about courage. I have done things that I never in my life thought I would ever do. And I've been around people. The first guy who was kind of my mentor in special forces had been shot 17 times. And I'm a street kid coming in from Chicago thinking I was tough. You get it? So courage is relative to your circumstance, of course. just like fear is, just as relative. It has specifically to do with its amount of value in that particular circumstance. You, and we're going to teach you this, specifically me, how to control your fear. And in those moments when you don't make a decision to do something, or you lack the desire to get involved, but you also see that your involvement is necessary and it's vital to someone's safety or some circumstance where you don't end up in jail or somebody else around you don't end up hurt. We're going to deal with that because you are a tough lady, but you got to have the courage to go with the toughness. And I don't mean the courage of I'm going to poke my chest out and fight everybody. I mean the kind of courage where you look, we call it that gut, that intestinal fortitude, that drive that you won't stop until you get it right. We have to get you there because sometimes you're so tough. It's like a mule. Forgive me, I'm not comparing you to a donkey or a mule, but there's some stubborn animals, aren't they? They only know one thing and they'll just keep doing that one thing. And you can beat them, you can push them over, you can do whatever, and they're going to keep doing it. But until you give them that carrot and you show them the value of doing it a different way, they won't. You need to be shown your value. And that's what I believe is your biggest problem. You don't know what your value is. Tell me, what is your value? You told me 70% you think you're okay and 30 not. And that's not bad compared to most of the terrible people in the world. Not that the whole world is terrible. Most people don't know their value. But I'm saying to you, a person is connected and viscerally connected with life because you've been through literal hell. You're connected, but you're connected on a negative end. There's a whole spectrum of opportunity that you're way over here. Your whole life has been hard and it's been difficult. You've survived. You've helped the people you most care about. You've done all of these wonderful things to educate them and get them in the right place so they're not suffering. You don't want them to suffer in the future, but it's all over here. Everything you do is right here. Your normal is here. You should be doing that right here. And your greatness is here. You're way over here because you're taking it all in on yourself like you have been since you were a little girl. This is not about trying to psychologize you or figure out your brain. It's about looking at your patterns and breaking you of them. You need to break those patterns. And the only way you can break a pattern, the only way is through doing something. I can give you pills, which I can't prescribe them. I'm just saying you can get pills, you can get all kinds of counseling, you can get all kinds of help, you can get psychiatrists, psychologists, you get everybody you want. But if you don't want to participate in breaking those patterns, you never will. They will not happen. You will continue along the same cycles you've been all along. But when you make that decision, I remember I used to smoke 2 packs of cigarettes every day when I was in the military. If I hadn't have tobacco in my mouth, because special forces, you put spitting and dipping and carrying on. I used to smoke 2 packs a day. And I ran like a gazelle. I could run 5 miles in 30 minutes or 28 minutes flat. Didn't have a problem. And one day, I decided I was going to quit. And someone whispered something in my ear. Until this day, I cannot even tell you who it was. They said, you'll never quit until you decide to do it for yourself. Don't do it for your kids. I didn't have any kids back then. Don't do it for your mom, your dad, your girlfriend. Don't do it for anybody. Never quit for anybody because it won't stick. Every relationship in the world is about an exchange of power. Some days you got 51%, or some days you got 38%, some days you got 100%, but it's never 50-50. Let me just correct myself. It's never 50-50. But when you're in a power struggle with yourself, that's a mean fight. And it'll hold you accountable. But you have to get into that struggle with yourself. You have to take on that fight. Have that courage. When I decided, okay, I'll quit for myself, till this very day, I've never had another cigarette. Not ever. Not even, you can come in the room after I eat and with a cigarette, and I don't even have a desire. Normally, that's when you want one. Or, but you have to decide within you. And I'm just talking about me as an example. You in real life, you have some very serious decisions to make about you. I think you're on your way. I think by even sitting here, having the courage to be on a live interview in the world, and you're kind of cagey now because, come on, who tells their business in the real world? But your story is so damn powerful. You know how many kids out there on drugs right now who would love to know how you got through it? Who's on their way to prison right now or getting out right now? How did you do it? Who had a loveless father? How did you get beyond it? How did you survive it? Who educated themselves after all odds, after dropping out of high school, when you didn't have to because you were a smart girl, a kid who was the best at everything until that other influence came in your life. How did you go from there? Everyone wants to know. Your story resonates with so many, the crimes you've committed, the reasons why, the human trafficking, the sexual favors, the especially prison. How do you stay out of prison now? People would love to know. Recidivism only happens because people don't have the tools to operate in society after they leave prison. So they end up back in prison as a result. Norm therapy aims to, of course, help anyone with recidivism, PTSD, you name it, but from a visceral connective relationship. I don't want to sit around and tell you what's wrong with you all day. I want to also see what's right with you. And let's find a balance because, like in the cartoons, what was that? God, the Flintstones. Fred Flintstone say, I'm going to the bowling alley. And then a little angel pops up, a little devil pops up and say, hey, you're not going there today. You're going to the bowling alley. You're going to hang out with the buds. We're going to have beers. And then the angel comes and says, no. His wife Wilma wants him to come home. Wilma wants him to come home and bring the groceries. And he's got these two angels tugging and warring for his soul all of his life. That's you. You have two spirits within you that are fighting for you. Who's going to control you? You got this little thing called id, another thing called ego, and then you got this thing that's you called the superego. And one's the referee, and the other two will fight to control you the rest of your life. Every single day. And you have to be up for that challenge. And if all you know is the bad spirit, not the demon, but the bad spirit that's been in control of most of your life, then we need to introduce you to the other spirit. There's a stronger and more useful and protective spirit within you. That's why you're sitting here today. And that's why you love your grandkids and your children so much and you treat them the way you treat them. And you understand them in a way to protect them and nurture them and create value in their lives and have them see themselves the same way. Because that's that good spirit. You've just been tug of warring with that bad spirit to get to that good spirit. That's what I like to go. Now, let me ask you a question. I know we talked a lot because I want to get us back on track before our upcoming sessions because we're going to start theming our sessions with you so we can talk about 2 or 3 things during that session that are oriented toward what is that corrective behavior now we need to take. It's all about behavior. I can't make you love me. I think every God has said that as a deity to all of their people since the beginning of time. I can make you do this. I can make you worship me. I can make you do whatever I want in your name, but I cannot make you love me. You have to want to love your new God. And your new God is your new good spirit. When I say that, I'm not talking about in competition with any other gods. I'm talking about within yourself. I think one of the things that every religious text on the planet says is that you should be more God-like. So your new God likeness within you, if that's what you subscribe, which I think it is, because we've had a slight discussion about your religion, you need to give it permission to help you make the good spirits. And I don't mean like, oh God, what do I do? Help me. I have a rule. I don't ask God for anything because he's God. He already knows. All I do is keep trying, and hopefully through my efforts, I please him. And we keep going from there. I'm different than a lot of people in that respect, and I think you are too. I think it's good that you have something bigger than you that you believe in. Now let's put it to work for you, but you have to do your part. And your part starts with you recognizing not just how bad you are, but also how good you are. You'll never have balance if you don't look at them both. And all you've looked at from what I've seen since I've known you and what you've talked about throughout your life, I think the only thing you've been looking at is the bad stuff. And every now and then you get this ray of sunshine and hope, and it's thwarted by something bad every time. So here's what I want you to do.
Okay.
I don't believe in affirmations and chants and all that. I just think that if you tell yourself something once and you mean it, then it'll stick. That's it. So I think you need to make a decision to tell yourself something. And once you do this, don't do it 50 times. Don't, cry about it if you like, but you should. Just take it seriously. Go look at yourself in the mirror and say 2 words. And then do me a favor, and I know it sounds kind of brute, but then shut up. Don't say another word. Go look at yourself right in your eyes. Take an hour, take 5 minutes, take 30 seconds. Just look at yourself in the eyes and say, I value. That's it. Nothing else. Don't say anything else. And I guarantee you, if you really, truly took your time and you believe that you value, you'll start seeing things different because you're looking at it from a point of value instead of a point of loss. That's why you're afraid for people to see you. From value, yes. I value. Just say I value. And then later on, we'll start talking about more. Oh, well, there you go. You can do it now if you like. I like that. I like that. That's pretty good. Okay, good. But at the end of the day, I want you to understand that it's difficult when people don't understand what's going on in your life. And you're trying to put on that air and that face for them. And it's not always a good thing. Try to be raw and true first. People don't like what you have to say. Tell them don't listen. You don't like I used to tell people all the time, if you don't like the answer, do not ask the question. I'm going to be brutally honest and tell you the truth, whether you like it or not. I think you got that streak in you somewhere, but you have to do it for yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Listen, Bobby, I'm going to close us out in a few minutes. Is there anything you want to say? I just caught us up, you and I. So our next session, we're going to have more discussions about you and the points that I put, on my bulletin board for us to come back to. Now, I always say put a pin in it. So I got about 30 pins here I want to talk to you about, but I wanted to get us back to a place where we have a line of understanding and discussion that we're going to follow. Is that okay with you?
Okay.
What would you like to tell me? Take a good minute and tell me something about you.
I have value. I'm valued. And I'm going to start saying that. And there was another assignment that you gave me, and forgive me, I forgot what it was. It was about making a list.
Yes, 2 lists.
2 lists, and I forgot what it was.
In your life, what is useful?
Oh, what is useful?
And what is useless?
And what is useless?
There's another set of lists that I gave you too. But for this exercise, I want you to show me what's useful and what's useless. Just talk to you. Ask yourself, what's useless in my life? What can I get rid of? What's not bringing me any value? Or what's useful? And something that may not be bringing me value now, but could bring me value if things change, or if I change them. Look at that list too. But those two lists, what's useful and useless? In norm therapy, we don't really think in terms of good and bad. We think of useful and useless. And we think that if you start there, you get to clean out a lot of clutter. Okay?
And
All
I'll
right.
commit to that.
I'm sorry?
I'll commit to that.
Next session, I want to hear both lists. And we'll be in contact. I'm gonna send you some notes over so we can talk, okay? All right.
Okay.
All right, great.
All right.
Let me sign off here. Everyone, I want you to understand that Bobby and I just had a kind of a coordination meeting where we got back on the same track. We'll be talking again in the next couple of days. I think Tuesday's our next session. And I'd like to see you all between 6 and 9 p.m. I'm sorry, forgive me. That's 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, forgive me. I'm thinking the time zone with me traveling around. I'm sorry? And everyone, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And make comments too. I'd like that. We are going to bring more graphics and stuff in later and make it prettier for everybody. But right now, it's just Bobby and I think I like it that way. Thank you, Bobby, for joining us today. And I look forward to talking again. But don't forget to go to our website at normtherapy.com or goarrow.org. And look at the good work we're doing around the world. Thank you very much and have a great day. Bye-bye.